yet?
Quite a few have, Bailey. So I think I'm actually going to release the results. So for us to know who's out there. So a very, very warm welcome to everybody from PlaySense. And we really are delighted that you're here. This was something that has been a dream of ours for a little bit of time now, because most of the people that we deal with in our communities are women, and many of them are working. And so we wanted to really just share with people some wisdom from people share with everybody wisdom from everyone. So from Aisha and from Caitlyn, who you'll introduce just now. So the poll is done, Bailey. I think I'm going to end it because it's now 8 o'clock. And I'm going to share the results so that you can see it too. There we go. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. Can you see the results there, Bailey?
I've got it.
All right. So yeah, you can see who's out there.
Wow. Okay.
So the majority have got little kiddies over 4 years old, which is great. So awesome to have all the mums who are juggling balls with older kids. I must tell you, Bailey, and for all the mums out there, I found that stage of parenting, the juggle is very real when your kids are in primary school. And then we've got full-time working, full-time from home. So that's pretty hardcore. And the statement that describes everyone is, I feel guilty about not spending enough time with my family. And when I excel at work, I struggle at home, and vice versa, which is so true, so real. Right.
This was the one I was really looking forward to finding out about self-care. And I think that's probably the one that I would have ticked to.
Every time I have the intention of prioritizing it, sometimes not managed, sometimes not. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Great. Over to you, Bailey. I'm sure everybody knows who you are. And Bailey is from Smile FM, and she's joined us. Well, she was from Smile FM, and she's joined us tonight to be our host. So over to you, Bailey.
Thank you very, very much. I mean, we used to ask women how they managed to juggle work and family. And then COVID struck, and women have just felt this constant juggle of work and family and childcare and education and a household and extended family. And it has just compounded completely. And so more and more women are feeling completely burnt out, completely overwhelmed, and it leaves self-care and wellness basically off the endless to-do list. And so in this women-only webinar, which is really, really special, we're going to be hearing from some of the most inspiring women in business who are going to be sharing their insights about the exciting and exhausting role that we play at home, at work, and in relationships. And tonight, those incredible women here to share their knowledge is Caitlyn De Beer. She is a wonderful speaker and coach. She hosts a successful podcast that I really adore listening to. It's called The Unpodcast. It's about you. And it's just about motherhood, self-management, and well-being. And she's the author of Walk Out the Water and a Mother of Two. And tonight she's going to be chatting about her 5 lessons from work that made her a better mom. We also have mom and entrepreneur Aisha Pandor. She's the co-founder and CEO of SweepSouth. And she's going to be talking really candidly about resilience and motherhood and building a successful tech company, amongst other things. And of course, then we have our wonderful Meg Forer, who's going to be chatting about making it work as a busy mom. So there's a lot to look forward to. Plus, the night would not be complete without incredible prizes to be won throughout the webinar. And so we're going to be giving away 2 books, Caitlyn's books, Walk Out the Water. And it's beautiful. It's 365 easily digestible and relatable devotions for every woman looking to deepen her faith, be inspired, and add more structure to her quiet time. Beautiful. We're also going to be giving away 2 SweepSouth vouchers, and that is bringing harmony to homes across South Africa with their fresh approach to home cleaning services, and giving away 2 Homeschool PlaySense programs, which is perfect for stimulating development at home in your own time. It gives you access to over 400 play-based activities that are designed by the experts, including additional resources, lists, books, music ideas, everything that you could ever hope for. And of course, tonight, very, very specially, we are giving away a PlaySense franchise, and we want you to share the good news. So we want you to, while you're listening to this webinar, get onto your social media, tag a friend who really wants to start their own play school with PlaySense, and get entered into a draw to win a fantastic hamper to the value of 5,360 Rand, just for sharing the good news. So the hamper includes the SweepSouth voucher, a Walk Out on the Water book, a sorbet voucher, because we have to do that self-care, a PlaySense homeschool, a Jeff Fitness Global one-on-one session, and the Brand Alchemy Social free one-on-one training session. So the winner of that hamper will be announced on the 25th of May, but we will get into all of that a little bit later on. So it's truly an incredible opportunity to share the love, tag moms, teachers, educators you know who might want to start their own play school. This would be the time. So with all of that said, I think let's get straight into our first speaker tonight. It's Caitlyn De Beer, author, speaker, and coach, and she shares how to make yourself a priority when really juggling everything and the kitchen sink. Over to you, Caitlyn. Welcome.
Amazing. Thank you. Am I live? Can you see me?
Yes.
Amazing, guys. Yeah, I always love, first of all, obviously, thank you, Bailey, and thank you, Meg. But I always love events like this. And I think I love speaking to women. That's my sort of natural go-to, but moms even more so. And just like Bailey earlier, Bailey made the comment where she said, I hope you can't hear my children. And we could, Bailey. But I love it because I'm thinking the same thing, because I know my one isn't asleep. And that's the joy of speaking to mums, is that we actually get it. That whilst it might look on Instagram or anywhere else that we've got it all together, none of us really do. So tonight I was given the topic, and it actually totally threw me, which I said to Meg earlier, but I love that when that happens as well. But the topic was 5 lessons from work that have made me a better mom. And I always felt like I could have spoken on what motherhood's taught me that I've applied to work. But now sort of going from work to motherhood, and it was supposed to be 5 lessons. I've timed myself and there's no way that I can do 5. So I'm going to do 4, unless I speak so fast, and then I will get into 5. But let's see how we go. So if you've heard me speak before, you'll know that I love to tell stories. So I'm going to start with the story. So in 2013, my husband and I lived in South Korea. And we were privileged enough, or we worked over there, and we were privileged enough to go to a wedding. Now, a wedding there, totally different, but similar in some ways, but very different. So we were the only Westerners in what, if you imagine just like a big sort of church or some sort of religious building with lots of pews, okay, so lots and lots of rows, and there were about 800 people at the wedding. So Koreans tend to invite everyone they know to the wedding, hence us being invited to a co-worker's wedding. So we were sitting in a pew, only Westerners in the entire building, and there was a young family sitting in front of us. Now, we didn't have kids yet. And there were 2 little kids. They were probably like 4 and 7, I would say now, 2 little boys. And they kept popping their heads like over the pew, looking at us, hosing themselves and like going back down. And then coming back up, looking at us. And we just thought they were like sweet kids, you know, laughing, whatever. And then suddenly they popped up, and I'm going to come really close. So excuse the lines in my face, but I'm going to show you what they did. So they went like this, and they pushed their eyes like in, and then they pushed their noses up like this. And then they like went down, funniest thing they've ever seen. Absolute hysterics. Anyway, their parents couldn't speak English, which is common over there, and they were so embarrassed, and we couldn't work out like what was even so funny. We thought they were pulling a funny face, and so we were like, no, don't worry, and they were like bowing, and anyway, it was just totally awkward, and they left the wedding. I mean, that's how serious. Anyway, took us a few minutes, but we figured out what they were doing. And what it was, that we'd lived there already for about a year, and what they were doing was, if we were to do this and sort of create an Asian eye, they were doing the opposite. They were creating our eyes, which are round, and they were pushing their eyes in and thought that our eyes were so funny. And it was just such an amazing thing for us, how we realized, and this is the first point that I want to make, is that anything can become normal if you see it or hear it enough times. Anything can become normal. And it took us that long to figure that out, because their eyes had become normal to us. We couldn't work out what they were doing. And if I apply that to motherhood, I feel it's the same in so many ways, and that so many of us go into motherhood kind of blind. We think we've got it worked out, but we have absolutely no cooking clue. And yet so quickly these voices start speaking, and they start defining our normal. And unfortunately, anything can become normal. And so if we listen to those voices, and if we don't choose our tribe and choose who we follow very carefully, we will start creating a normal that might not be for us. And this has been such a challenge for me personally, especially I think in terms of unrealistic expectations. And that's sort of the first encouragement I wanted to say, is to really be wise in our choice of who we surround ourselves with, both physically and as well as online, and which voices we choose to take in as mums, because there are so many voices, but not all deserve to be speaking into your life and speaking into your role as mum, and making you feel things that perhaps you were never meant to feel. So watch those voices that are speaking in, because those voices will ultimately determine the voice inside your head, which again, if you follow me, you'll know is such a big part of my sort of message. It's just that voice and choosing a kind voice in your head for yourself. Second one, Bailey, you're going to have to give me a sort of time up, because I forgot to put a timer on. I got like overexcited like I do. So at some point, give me a like, you're done, even if I'm on number 3. So second one that I wanted to say, so everyone here is obviously working mums in whatever capacity that is. And you would know that at some point in work, you've had a goal that sort of trumped everything else in your life. So something that's sort of like it's come before social commitments, it's come before sleep, it's come before parenting, whatever that is. And it's often easy to justify work. So if you've got this big work goal, it's sort of easy to say like, oh, I'm so sorry, we can't come on Thursday night. I'm actually working on this really big work thing. And in our mind, we just say like, oh, well, I know what the goal is. And so it's sort of easy to make excuses, if you can call it that, or just reasons for justifying our behavior around that goal. And I'm sure that resonates, because we'll all have something like that. And I've had many of those, probably my book being the latest, which was something that definitely came before everything, including my family, which I maybe need to reassess when I write a second. But when it comes to motherhood and sort of how I've applied, I think, the same thinking. And I suppose my encouragement here, I ran a mum's course for a good few years. I might start running it again, I'm still deciding. But a big question that I ask all the mums who do this course with me is, what is your goal? What is your goal for mothering? What is your goal for mummyhood? And if you can define that, and I actually just, when I was writing these notes, I was just thinking for me what I would say, and I wrote out a little sentence I'll read for you. So I said it would be to raise kind, self-assured and balanced kids, my goal, who know God and who know themselves. So that would be my goal. I think the kind, self-assured, balanced, they know God, they know themselves. And then the next question, and this one's probably even more important, because we can think of a million things of these wonderful children we want to raise, but what would it take for us as mums to do that? What would it take for us to keep that goal in mind? And the reason I say that is because it probably wouldn't take you quitting your job and being with them 24/7. It probably wouldn't take you stopping running so that you can be with them, between 5 and 6 at night. It would probably be a very different story if you had to ask yourself that question of what would a good mum be for you in order to do those things. And for me, when I asked myself that question, and I encourage the women always in my course, the mums, to just find 2 words if possible, mine was stable and happy. If I can be stable and happy, I can be a good mom. And if I can be a good mom, I can raise those kids. And then the guilt starts to disappear, because you can justify those things because you're keeping the goal in mind, much like we do with work. You're remembering what the point was. The point was to raise those wonderful little human beings, and you're a shitty mum when you're not stable and happy. So go for your flipping run and come back and spend the 1 hour with them, but do it well. So that was sort of my second one. I don't know where I'm at with time, so I'm just going to keep going. My third one. Are we good for now? So a little story again. So I'll never forget. There was a public holiday, and I'm pretty sure it was this sort of time of year. So about May 2017. And I was very pregnant with Noah, my second child, and I had a 1-year-old, Sarah. So, I had them close together. So it was very chaotic. Well, I hadn't even had them yet, so it was chaotic. But we were driving down to the beach. So it was on a public holiday, common thing for us to do. And we were driving down to the beach. My husband was driving. I was pregnant, and Sarah was in the back. And a relatively difficult 1-year-old. Not relatively, rather. And we got down to the beach, and I couldn't get out the car. And it wasn't because my tummy was too big. It was because I literally could not stop crying. I did not know how to juggle the balls that I was trying to juggle. And at the time I was running my business that I still run now, my coaching sort of brand. And then I was lecturing in psychology, and I just started a new brand, a fitness brand. And I literally did not know how to do it all. And my husband, whenever I had these like real big wobblies, he goes into coaching mode. I've trained him well. But he immediately says to me, like, he starts asking these powerful questions. And he said in that moment, what can you give up? And I was like, nothing, I can't give up anything. I mean, I have to do all these things. And so he said, well then what could you do to help? And again, I said, nothing, but I sort of gave it some thought. We didn't go to the beach, we drove back home. But in the trip home, we discussed it very calmly and quietly. And I said that I needed hands, I needed more help. And I admitted that, and that was such a big learning for me. And Meg and I actually spoke about this on a live earlier today, but I ended up hiring a PA. And it only lasted for about a year, because that's, or maybe a bit longer, maybe a year and a half, because Noah obviously came into the picture like a month later. But it was mind-blowing, the difference it made. And PAs were always out there. I just didn't know that I needed to ask or admit what it would take. And it's the same, it goes for motherhood. And again, I said this quote, and I'm going to say it wrong again, Meg, because I couldn't find it on Google, and I didn't make it up, although I'd like to claim it. There's a quote that's out there, you might have seen it. It's a meme, and it says something along the lines of like, I've heard it takes a village to raise a child. Mine hasn't found me. Could someone give me the number? Or like something along those lines, like, or is there a number I should call, or something like that. Anyway, early motherhood, I sure as hell felt that way. Real, like, feel sorry for yourself, you know, I'm all alone and so on. But in the last year or so, I've been through a really sort of bad chronic pain syndrome thing. And I've mostly had to give up a lot of my work, and I've had to give up movement completely and being quite homebound or bedbound for about a year and a half. And in that time, I learned to rely on people. And it was a beautiful, humbling process for me, how all these people, I mean, we live in an estate, a beautiful estate, and I knew they were all here. I just didn't know that they were willing or able or not even able. I wasn't humble enough to admit it. But in that state, just how neighbors stepped in and took our kids and offered to do things, and meals just arrived, and friends were just absolutely phenomenal. And I've got a few on tonight of these girls, but my village suddenly appeared. And what I wanted to say tonight is it didn't appear just out of nowhere. I don't think it ever happens that way. Or if it did for you, then give us that number. But for me, it was because I was honest enough to actually say I'm not okay, and I need help, much like I had with work that day at the beach. And so, yeah, if you're looking for your village, look around you. They're probably all there already. It's just actually admitting to ourselves that these people could really make a difference in our lives. And gosh, these people have humbled me to my absolute core. I'm going to make one last point. Am I okay for time? Can you give me a thumbs up or a no? Am I? Cool. So I'm going to go on to the last one. So this will be number 4. In my sort of late teens, and sorry if you've heard this before, it's part of my sort of standard talk that I give often. But in my late teens, I was in a really rough space, and I was going through therapy, and I wrote in the middle of an A4 page. This came out of nowhere. I was sort of not the problem. That had been there for a long time. But this activity came out of nowhere, in that I was so stuck in like performing for attention. I was so stuck in who I thought the world expected me to be, that I felt like I'd lost myself in many ways. And gosh, as mums, how often do we feel that we're caught in not so much performing, just surviving, but that we've forgotten who we are. And this was at age 18. But I wrote the words in the middle of a page, A4 page, and I really encourage you to actually do this activity. But I wrote, what makes me come alive? And the idea was that I was going to, every time I had a moment that made me feel like, oh my word, that's so me, I'm going to jot it down. And so at first I could name only about 5. And I do this in all the courses I run in coaching. And most people can only name about 5. So like running went on, and I love the beach, and I love time with my brothers. It was easy to do about 5. And then you tend to get stuck. And then this page just journeyed with me for almost 2 years. It would be like under my bum in my car, and then it would be on the dashboard. And I would literally like hear a good song. I can't see myself. Sorry, I'm on my notes. So I hope that I'm looking fine. But I would, be driving in my car, and a good song would come on, and I would like turn it up really loud and do some car dancing, which if you don't know, can be like such a good workout. And I'd be like, oh my word, I love car dancing. And at the next robot, I'd get that onto my what makes me come alive list. And like I'd eat a croissant, and I'd be like, I love croissants is going on. And this carried on, and I was had gone through not a nasty breakup, but a breakup, and after a good few years, and I started swinging, which I've since learned I have to say swinging on swings, because I never used to say that part, and then I do this talk at corporates, and now I even do the action. I'm like, swinging on swings, I swung on swings. But I started swinging on swings at the age of like 18 or whatever I was, and I loved it, and that went on my page. And fast forward a good few years, about 6 years, and this page had about 60 things on it, and I was sitting with a friend on her couch, and she just sat down like in a slump, and she just said, you know, I don't even know if anyone even knows what makes them happy. And I was like, me, pick me. No, I'm teasing, I wasn't, but that's what I felt inside myself, because I was so stoked that I'd found those things, and that I journeyed there, and I managed to create a career from that. And I'm not saying I love my career every day, but in many ways I do. And pulling that into motherhood, I'm so grateful that I know myself. And when it comes to self-regulation, gosh, girls, we need to know ourselves. We need to know, if you've got 5 minutes, what is it that you need? Not what I need. What is it that you need? Because if we don't know, when those 5 minutes arrive, we'll probably sit scrolling on our cell phones. And yeah, I think that's the last thing that I want to leave you with, because knowing me, I'm over time already. Thanks,
well, I
Bailey.
absolutely love that. A lot to take from it. Very glad you cleared up on swinging, because it's not that kind of talk.
Would you have asked later?
But I am really proud of you and everything that you've achieved, and congratulations on your new book. And thank you for being generous. We're going to be giving out 2 of those books. So I don't know, have you seen your winner there?
Yes, I've got my name, so I'm going to announce it. So congratulations to Amanda Lowe. You have won my book. Yay.
And congratulations to Lola van der Merwe. You've also won one of those books. So that is really special. Caitlyn, thank you again. Really do appreciate it. Our next lady in the spotlight is Aisha, and I am very excited to hear about her. She's the co-founder and CEO of SweepSouth, and she is going to be talking candidly about resilience and motherhood and building that very successful company of hers. So Aisha, welcome. It's so lovely to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Bailey, and good night, good evening, everyone. Loved that talk, Caitlyn, and I think it's interesting that I think so many people over the last year are sort of coming to this realization that we've got to put ourselves first to be able to be there for family and friends and everything else. Very similar to that I've been. So the title of my talk is The Accidental Entrepreneur. So I'll just give a little bit of background into how I ended up being an entrepreneur, and then a little bit about that journey and how I'm learning to find a bit more balance as a mom and businesswoman. And I saw that there are a lot of businesswomen and working moms on this call as well. So hopefully there'll be a few nuggets that help to inspire you all as well. But just to share a little bit more about SweepSouth, the company that myself and my co-founder, who happens to be my husband, and there's probably another talk in there somewhere. But the company that we founded about 7 years ago called SweepSouth. What we are is we a platform for home services. We work primarily with domestic workers, but with a range of home services providers. And what we're trying to do is help women who work in this industry who are unemployed or underemployed to connect with homeowners who need their services. And over the last 7 years or so, we've helped 25,000 women and some men find work. We've launched out of South Africa, but are operating in Kenya, and will launch in Nigeria, hopefully in the next month or so. And have done over 5 million hours of cleaning in homes all around the continent, and paid out tens of millions of rands to domestic workers and other home service providers. So yeah, lots of history there. But from being a young girl, I never would have imagined a career as an entrepreneur. So here are a few pictures of me when I was younger. As a child, I was very, very curious, and I still am. Ask way too many questions for my own good. And when I was young, that sort of questioning nature led to me being really interested in studying science at university. So, enrolled in a BSc after school. I wasn't actually that good at science itself. And so, yeah, against everyone's sort of better advice, I ended up studying science, really enjoyed it. Sort of started to find my groove towards the end of my bachelor's degree, and then decided to study an honors degree focused on human genetics. I'd started to hone in on being curious about human beings and what makes us human, and when things go wrong and we get ill, what is the problem and how do we fix it? And so I found that really fascinating and turned my honors degree into a master's degree, which I then turned into a PhD. And towards the end of my studies, I started to think about what I would do when I finished studying. I'd now been studying for 10 years and started, thinking about what are the sort of career options that are available for people who've done a PhD in human genetics. And I thought about academia, and just started to feel more and more as I was writing up my thesis, or getting ready to write up my thesis, that didn't really feel aligned to what I wanted to do with my life. And I think in particular, I started to think about, purpose and the sort of work that I wanted to do, and felt that personally for myself, being, in academia and solving very interesting intellectual problems made me feel very removed from the sort of day-to-day issues that people face in South Africa. And I wanted to try and put my skills and personality, sort of personal attributes to broader use and to broader benefit. And so I decided to study business while I was writing up my PhD, enrolled in a business course at UCT's Graduate School of Business, really, really loved it. And then decided to work as a management consultant to get a little bit more business experience. That experience was awesome. It was the first time I'd ever worked in a corporate setting. I was so excited the first time that I got to wear high heels to work. It was something that I'd never done, in my entire experience as a student. So it was very exciting, and sort of the corporate world looked very, very glamorous. But after a while, I started to really struggle with work-life balance, and in particular started to struggle with this feeling that the work that I was doing, although it was great experience-wise and would be great on my CV, wasn't necessarily work that felt aligned with my purpose and what I wanted to personally do with my life. I also had a daughter who was 3 or 4 at the time. And I remember we were working in Joburg. I'm now based in Cape Town. But I remember, driving to drop her off at school, which was a little bit out of the way from work, and then dropping her off just at the time that the school opened, so that I'd be in time for work, and then sort of rushing to get to work and always being late for work because of traffic, and then starting the day off just feeling awful. And then it would just become this spiral where I'd then want to prove to everyone that I was working, a long day. So would stay extra at the end of the day, and then would drive home really depressed and get home late, and then feel really guilty because, I was getting home so late and sort of not able to cook supper, or my daughter was feeling like she wasn't getting enough attention. And so I was just in this really unhealthy sort of spiral around, not feeling like my work was purposeful, but also just feeling like my work life and my family life were really, really not well balanced. And so I decided to, after 2 years, resign from my job. My husband, who was going through a similar process in his work as a software engineer, decided to resign from his job at roughly the same time. So very, very responsible parenting there. And we both sat at home and sort of thought through different ideas of what to do next. And as we were thinking through ideas, our nanny, who was looking after our daughter at the time, said to us that she was going to be going away on holiday, and she asked us to step in temporarily, or to get someone to step in temporarily. And through that experience of trying to find someone to step in, but then also interviewing different women to come and work with us while she was away, we realized that actually there was, this industry where there are many families who need help and who need help in getting connected to the right people, but more importantly, there are many, many home service providers, many domestic workers, many nannies who are struggling to find work and struggling to get connected to work. And so we decided to build this platform, SweepSouth, that would help solve this problem. And so the next slide is literally the first day of launching SweepSouth, so the first sort of live booking on the platform. After our initial idea, we spent about 5 or 6 months building the technical platform and sort of interviewing people at home on our couch in our TV room, and started the business from there. And for the first time in my career, which was still relatively young, but for the first time started to feel, as we were interviewing these women and hearing about their experiences in this industry and hearing the excitement about this platform that would help you find work on your own terms, on the days that you want, and if you didn't want to go to a job, you could say no. And it was the first time that we really felt like we were doing work that was purposeful and that satisfied what we wanted to do with our lives. And so fast forward to 7 years later, and SweepSouth has about 60 employees. Again, we've worked with about 25,000 home service providers, but lots and lots of challenges along the way and lots of learnings. And so, I mean, I could, again, just talk for ages about all of the various things that cropped up, but I thought I'll just share some of the unexpected challenges that we faced in starting a business, share some learnings, and then maybe talk about how that's translated to a bit more of a personal growth journey. So some of the challenges in starting SweepSouth, I think, the first thing was going from someone who had worked in the corporate space and who prior to that had, I'd worked by myself in a lab or maybe with my research group, but then going to having to be responsible for an entire business and for, managing employees and managing all of the various sort of personal issues that people might have. And really feeling like I had to hold all of these people and every facet of this business on my shoulders. And it was a big awakening for me, a big eye opener. I'd sort of, just imagine that running a business would be freedom. And I think a lot of people think that when you first start your business, I'm going to work my own hours. I'm going to, be in charge of my own life. When the reality for me was very much that it felt like a lot more responsibility than when I was employed by someone else. I think other challenges that we came across were upskilling myself. And I'd gone from a background where, I had a really strong educational background, was often, because I'd studied something in quite a lot of detail, was, the expert in the room when it came to that. And the experience of running a business was that I just didn't know so many things. And I had to really just become comfortable with, firstly, saying, I don't know. And then secondly, going and trying to learn. And it involved and still does involve a lot of Googling and a lot of asking people for, their input, their advice, their opinion on things. And then the last thing, which I think was another fallacy that I had getting into entrepreneurship, was the notion that growth and doing well as an entrepreneur doesn't always feel great. And I remember the first time we experienced this, we were about 3 years into starting SweepSouth, and we had a huge month. It was at the end of the year, when a lot of helpers are going away and people are desperate for services, and we just were completely unprepared for the influx of business and requests that came in. And a lot of the sweep stars, who we call the service providers who work on our platform, were going away on holiday, and we had a lot of customers wanting to use the service and then getting let down, and it just felt absolutely horrendous having all of these people have such a bad first experience with the platform. And so we had to eat humble pie. And firstly, just chip in, and I again had to jump into sort of being a customer support person and going out to do bookings and cleanings if there wasn't anyone else available, and at the end of it having to apologize to customers who we'd let down. But a very, very sort of humbling experience, and a reminder that sometimes the things that you wish for aren't necessarily going to happen in the way that you want, but also sometimes they're hidden lessons and all of that. And then on a personal level, grappled with, as I think so many people do, just work-life balance. And by this point, sort of after 7 years down the line, have had 2 more children, and it just feels like a constant balance. One of the questions was, how do you feel like you're doing work-life balance? It's something for me that I constantly feel like I'm struggling with, and constantly feel like I'm just not on top of. There's always sort of the school side is not going well, or the kids side is not going well. And if that's going well, then I feel like I'm neglecting work. And it's just this, constant trying to keep up with, what you feel you should be doing at work or at home. So some learnings from this, and I'll go through it quickly because I've probably used up my time, but just some learnings that have come out of this. And I think the last year has been so incredibly useful in that I think it's just presented the opportunity for people to think differently about how you do life and how you take care of yourself. So some of the learnings that have come out of building our own business, but particularly doing it during a pandemic, with that last year, there was so much that I didn't know about what would happen and how things would end out. And I just had to sort of let go and say, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. I have to be okay with not knowing, and be okay with not having all the answers, and just sometimes leave things to, let's just see how things unfold and we'll be responsive. And it's actually made for a more relaxed me, but also made for a much better culture at work, where the entire organization has just become comfortable with saying, we don't know, we'll respond when it happens. The constant learning. So again, just upskilling myself, learning how to head up a team, learning how to be a better entrepreneur, a better boss. I've learned that a lot of that isn't necessarily about books, but about listening to people, about empathy, about being vulnerable. Last one, self-care and self-worth, and Caitlyn talked about this a little bit, but I think 7 years ago, if someone said to me, you'd be the sort of person who talked about things like self-care and taking time out, I would have probably laughed in their face, like as a scientist. It was just something that I didn't really think about, but I've just come to learn that it's so important to look after yourself, to take a bit of time off yourself. Use the sorbet voucher. If you don't have time to go to the spa, sit and take a bit of time out for yourself. My personal practices are, daily meditation, making sure that I switch off. It's some of those moments that are, when you have the best sort of insights about your life, being able to step back and look at what's working and what's not. So that's a little bit of my journey and how I've gone from sort of a very science academic background to starting SweepSouth, doing work that's a lot more purposeful, but I think also having a bit better realignment over the last year or so. So hopefully there's a bit of inspiration and lessons there for everyone as well. Thanks.
Aisha, thank you so much. Absolutely incredible story. And really special to find out how you went through it. I'm seeing a beautiful theme here, and I suppose each one of us in the room will take little bits from it. But the beautiful theme for me is to get some sort of balance is you can't be afraid to ask for help. Caitlyn mentioned it with asking her village. Aisha, you mentioned it with people needing help with nannies and domestic workers, and you creating that platform for help. And that's what I'm starting to see this theme emerging from. So Meg, before we do that, you have been amazing, Aisha, in giving us SweepSouth vouchers. In fact, we've got 2 very lucky winners. Aisha, have you got your winner there?
Yes, so my winner is it Presley Naidu?
Hey, congratulations. And the other winner who will be receiving a SweepSouth voucher is Robin Hill. Yay, congratulations. Well, Meg, making it work as a busy mom, please enlighten us.
Right. Oh, thank you so much, Bailey. And Aisha and Caitlyn, I really, really appreciate your input tonight. I have loved this evening. It has been one of my favorite webinars, just because of how real it is, and because we are really all surviving motherhood and working at the moment. And that's just so apparent tonight. So a little bit about me and my journey. You know, I never signed up for corporate. I'm an occupational therapist, so that was never on the cards for me, and have never even embarked on that. So I'm really not going to speak to that journey at all. And I know many of you here tonight probably are in corporate. But my journey, I really always intended to be primarily a mum and to make my career fit around that. That was always the intent. So I was going to be a mum, and then I could plug it in as I wanted to. And the journey to that, and I really wanted to kind of speak about the 4 different routes, because if you are going to work for yourself, there's probably only 4 ways that you're going to be doing it. And those are, in fact, all of them are things I've had experience in. So the first way in which women come to work, if they're working for themselves, is potentially as a professional. And that's, I was an occupational therapist, you might be a psychologist, you might be a lawyer. And professionals really are, I mean, it's fabulous because your hours, your own, you can decide. If you decide that you never want to work on a Friday, you never have to work on a Friday. So it's great from that perspective. Generally, if you're a professional, you're probably doing what you love, or at least what you thought you were going to love when you studied it. So you're doing what you love. You can take holidays. If your kids are on holiday, you can shut your practice down if you want. And of course, you don't have to have staff unless your practice is very big. So there's lots of pros to becoming a professional. And I had quite a bit of experience in that as an occupational therapist. The problem with being a professional is that you're charging for time. And so that means that at every given moment, you're trying to squeeze as many patients, as many clients, as many legal contracts into as smaller hours as possible, because otherwise you're not going to cover the bills. And so in the back, you always know that with all the background hours that you're doing for your patients outside of your billing time, you're not going to be able to bill for that. So my experience of becoming a professional and working in the professional world was that there was an enormous amount of pressure, and I didn't feel like I was always being rewarded for it. So I went on and then started to write the books, and that's the writer and the creative. And of course, there you've got absolutely, you can dictate the deadlines, you get to do and write and be creative about the things that you're loving. And you're generally doing what you love if you are a creator. The cons are there are only a small amount of creatives, and here I'm speaking about creatives in the sense of art and music and writing. Only a small percentage actually make it, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder when it comes to if you're being a creator. I know that Bailey, your husband's a well-known DJ. There's a real creator, and so very often the rewards aren't entirely there, because people have got to really love your stuff, and not everybody does. And I've experienced that with the books, and more so with the books, that actually there isn't a lot of reward, because very often you're giving away a big percentage to publishers and so on. So that was the second way that you might come to business. The third part, which is of course what Aisha's spoken to, is the entrepreneur. And the benefits of being an entrepreneur is your own boss. There's nobody who you need to really answer to, except if you've got funders, and that's a whole nother story. You define the timeline and the speed at which you'll scale. You define your hours. So there's lots of pros to being an entrepreneur. However, this I will tell you about being an entrepreneur. A business, and particularly a brand like SweepSouth is, and like PlaySense is, and like BabySense was, that I was originally involved in. A brand is another life. It is a real another life. It is just like a child. And like a child, what you put into it is your life energy. And so if you are an entrepreneur and you're building a brand, you are giving your life energy at every given moment. And that means that you are very often going to be absolutely exhausted, just like you are as a mother. A brand or a business, if you are entrepreneurial, needs to be fed. It shouts when it's ignored. And just like a 4-month-old, it never sleeps. And so being an entrepreneur is a really, really hard route to earning money as well. So you can see my picture here is that it doesn't matter which route you take, whether you're in the corporate, which I can't speak to because I haven't experienced, but I know that somebody else owns your time. Whether you are a professional, whether you're a creative, or whether you are an entrepreneur, you really are juggling really, really difficult balls, and because all the time there are huge demands. The fourth type of business journey that I think really does work well for mums, and particularly people who do want to juggle their life, their work-life balance, is being in a franchise. And obviously I've got into that through PlaySense. And so PlaySense does have franchises. That's how all of our teachers come to be with us. The benefit of that is that you've got a tried and tested model. There's a background infrastructure. You don't have to sweat the brand because somebody else has to do it. And of course, the con is that you're going to have to give up some of your revenue in order to get that benefit. And so those really are kind of the routes that most of you in this in this audience probably would have come to business if you're not in corporate. So let's talk a little bit about working from home and flexi hours. Well, I mean, COVID has just taught us a whole lot about that. You know, kind of March last year, many of you who are in corporate had never had to work at home with a small child. And now it's common life for absolutely all of us. We have an all-women team. Actually, I lie, we've now got 2 men in the PlaySense team, but most of our women are work-from-home mums, and they are juggling the balls and potentially with little ones at home. And I remember in the midst of lockdown, watching Mandy trying to juggle grade 1 reading and trying to think actually how on earth she was coping with juggling those balls, plus with all the demands that we were putting on her from the work environment. What's happened with working from home is that it's come with blessings and it's come with challenges. So the blessings are that we're flexible. We can be there for our kids. We've got flexibility. We're able to just go to the Mother's Day ring if we need to, because we're working from home, so we can. But the challenge is that we're always on. And I can tell you, and I know that it is true for Aisha, I know it's true for most women who are working from home now, is that you are never off duty in terms of work. Just before you go to bed, you're quickly checking in on your emails. After dinner, you get up and you go and answer some emails. And so, and while you're making dinner for the kids, you've got a Zoom conference going on. So, you know, we're juggling these balls. And I think in many ways, this post-pandemic world has added an enormous amount of pressure to what was already a pressure cooker situation for mums. So just a couple of tips that I've got, and I'm going to go through a couple of things that I think we can do to make it work. And I want to put it out straight there that I am definitely not a picture perfect image of somebody who's got the balance right. I drop balls all the time. I think all that's happened, and the only thing that has changed since I had baby sense, is that I've learned how to drop them a little bit more gracefully and kind of walk away from them, because we know that we just do drop balls. That's what happens. So a couple of tips. The first one is, I think it's very important in your marriage to have date time. And that's something that we prioritized in our marriage from very early on. When you've got young children and when you're running a business, you are distractible all the time. And the person who gets the least of you is your partner. That's a given. Maybe yourself, but between you and your partner, one of the two of you gets the least of you. And so setting aside date night, I think, is absolutely essential as a working mom. The second thing that's essential, I think, is watch, wait, and wonder time. And watch, wait, and wonder, if you've done any of my sleep courses, you'll know about it. It's that real one-on-one connection that we do with our children. And it's usually 10 to 15 minutes of undivided attention each day. And if you can't manage it each day, put it in the diary for once a week. But the reason that is so important is that you need to turn off your cell phone. You need to be there in the moment. It was developed by a psychologist called Elizabeth Muir, and it is a technique to actually help people deal with sleep problems with their children, emotional difficulties, and a whole gambit of psychological or behavioral issues. But it does so much even in a typically developing child, and also in a kind of a typical family. It isn't just for children under the age of 3. I have got teenagers, and I can tell you that in Watch, Wait, and Wonder, one of the things you do is go and have a sundae or an ice cream or a waffle out somewhere with them, with your cell phones off, because those 15 minutes is Watch, Wait, and Wonder time with teenagers. The other thing that I do think we need to talk about is just how distracted we are. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you are actually doing your work or whether you're looking after children. You've got your other hand doing the other job. So if you're on a Zoom call, you're thinking about who's picking my child up from school, as an example. Or when you're making supper for your kids, you're quickly checking your WhatsApp and your Facebook and your email. And so you kind of start to blur the boundaries terribly between work and play, or work and motherhood. And I think one of the very important things that we could do there is to develop something that I call the 80-20 rule. And that is that if you divide up your time, so let's say that you work for 5 hours of the day, and then you're a mum for, let's say, 7 hours of a day, however it works out. During those 5 hours that you've committed to your boss or to your business, 80% of that time must be absolutely undiluted. In other words, that's really, really deep time where you can focus only on that business. I know at the back of your mind, you might be thinking about who's collecting the child, but really trying not to dilute it in any way. And likewise, when you're with your kiddies, even if it's only for 2 hours in the evening after you've got home from a busy day at work, 80% of that time must be undiluted. There must be nothing of work that comes into that space. Make it hallowed space, and do it for work and do it for children, because the whole thing of multitasking actually is a bit of a fallacy, because you then are never giving 100% to either being a mum or to your job. And then the other tip that I have, and I know that this is something that Lara, my co-founder, did on Sunday. I sent her a WhatsApp at 8:30 in the morning, and she responded at 4:30 in the afternoon, which is fine. It was a Sunday. But when she came back on, she said, sorry, I've had a tech-free day. I have to actually show my kids what that's about. And I think that's very important, is to have days of the weekend or hours of the day or holidays in which you have completely zero tech hours. And I think that's very important. And one of the things we used to do was every July, we would go to my husband's family, he had a game farm, and we would go there, and there was a clubhouse, and we would lock our cell phones in the cubby hole of the rental car up at the clubhouse and take the Land Rover down to the house. And that would literally mean that we had absolutely no contact with the outside world. And I think that those holidays, if I speak to my children, and they've been on wonderful holidays, were the best of their lives, just because they had unadulterated attention. It was just about them and family. So one other question that I know comes up is, how do I actually start to choose childcare? Like, how do I make this work? Because, and for those of you who are new moms, for those of you who are new to motherhood, you will know that there is enormous guilt when you start to outsource your children to somebody else. Like, how do we do this? Is this right? And there's all this guilt that just we bring on ourselves. And, I think that, often we point fingers outwards and say, the mother guilt is brought on by other people, but actually it's brought on by ourselves. We have these standards that are unattainable. And one of them is that I want to be the only person that cares for my child. And now I want a career as well. And so these standards feel like we're failing. So just a couple of little tips. So the first thing is, when you're looking for childcare, first of all, ditch the guilt. And any of you who know or have worked with anything that I do, I don't believe in mother guilt. I think it is the most destructive emotion for us as women. And so when you've made the decision to work, make the decision constructively and ditch the guilt. So how do you make it constructively? Well, the first thing is, you're going to look for somebody, whether it's a teacher or a carer, that has had extra training in caring for little ones. You want to know that the person that you're leaving your child with, number one, has to have a first aid course. And if she doesn't have she has to have a first aid course. And in addition to that, she has to have some sort of ECD training. And I think that's very important, because these years of a child's life are critical for long-term development. And if you know that you've hired somebody who's got those skill sets, you'll know that, okay, that one box is ticked, one thing that I don't have to feel guilty about. The second thing is, wherever you leave your child, whether it's at a day mum, whether it's with your granny, whether it's at a place in school, whether it's at a big creche, make sure that the person that takes your child from you in the morning is absolutely passionate about children. And I can tell you, and I don't need to tell you, that looking after toddlers is a flippin' hard thing to do. And so if you're not passionate about it, you're going to fall out of love with it very quickly. And that's one of the things that I'm so grateful for our PlaySense teachers. They are utterly passionate about toddlers. They live, they eat, they breathe, the activities they're doing, the funny things their children say. It's what gets them up in the morning. And you want to know that the person that you drop your child off with has that attitude. In terms of what's the gold standard, I do think that under 18 months, children need very direct and focused relationships. And that's why I believe in a day mum or a nanny scenario. And we're very lucky in South Africa, and I think I have loved this partnership with SweepSouth, because I believe in what they're doing. And I think I was an early adopter. I was telling Aisha, I was one of those people in that crisis when everybody was going on holiday in that December, because I was an early adopter of SweepSouth. But I believe that we've got wonderful, amazing, caring women in our South African community who can be our nannies for our children, and we're very fortunate. From there, from 18 months old, a play group, a creche is a great scenario. And until your child is 4 years old, that ratio should only be up to 6 children to 1 carer. So one person really being able to focus on no more than 6 children. And the last part about childcare that I want to mention is, make sure you do a really good handover in the morning. So make sure you leave your child happily. Aisha spoke about it, and it's very real for us that we kind of drop the kid and run because we're in the rush. But make sure that handover happens seamlessly and happily, and that the school knows what type of night they've had, and whether or not they've eaten breakfast, and all those type of details. So finally, my little tips, and I know that we're running out of time, so just 5 little tips that I want to just give to you as we finish off. The first one, Aisha's mentioned it, Caitlyn's mentioned it: lean on help when needed. Don't be shy to call on family or your mama tribe. And I think showing that vulnerability with people who are on the same boat as you is important. I was part of a set of A-type mums at both my daughter's schools. And if you're watching tonight, you know exactly who you are. We had everything covered. We were those A-type mums. But you know what? It just took one or two of us to start to show the cracks and say, please, guys, I need help. Or I'm stuck in a meeting. Somebody needs to go because my child's sitting at the gate. Has anybody left the school already because I can't get there? And the minute you start to do it, everybody else starts to reciprocate. And suddenly you become part of a mama tribe. And that's how you really ignite your village. Second thing, I've said it already, schedule one-on-one time each week with your child and your partner and for yourself. And that's why tonight we've got a sorbet voucher for you, because you must schedule time for yourself. And Aisha does it in her meditations. I do it in my exercise and in my quiet times. It might be for you just having an afternoon nap, but make sure you've got it in your diary. Putting time in your diary for your own time, very important. A walk with a friend is a non-negotiable for me. It's where I do all my defragging, have to do that. Lower your standards. You know, I think potentially all the panelists here tonight have the capacity to be A-type and perfectionists, but all of us have learned that it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's a big message to take away. And finally, be kind to yourself when the balls drop. They will. Be gracious, turn and look at them and walk on. Because at the end of the day, you really are amazing for having juggled the balls that you are. And I think recognizing that is the first step in the journey towards kind of accepting yourself for just being human. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meg. Absolutely brilliant. I actually hope every single person is screenshotting. Yeah, I hope that you are taking screenshots, because it really is brilliant to go back and have a look at that. Meg, you are giving away homeschool PlaySense programs. I mean, I know the people with PlaySense are incredibly passionate. You have to be exactly what you spoke about. So have you got your winner?
I do. And I would love anybody who's watching to join our PlaySense groups, because they are something very special. But this winner is winning our recently launched homeschool. So this doesn't have a teacher with it, but it has all the activities and everything you need to be able to stimulate your little one. And the winner of this prize is Jaslyn Moolman.
Hey, congratulations. And the second winner, congratulations to Elsa Swart. Well done. So PlaySense franchise opportunity. Meg, this is incredible. You really are helping women to become those entrepreneurs. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so I mean, we're hugely passionate about empowering women, and in a very similar way as SweepSouth has done. What we do though is we go on and we actually train the teachers. So what our teachers do is they get full training. They get a full set of equipment. So we literally give you a school in a box. And it's not just one box, it's boxes and boxes of all the equipment that you needed. So these PlaySense schools, the mums who do, mums, teachers, au pairs who join us and become our PlaySense teachers have to pay 36,800 Rand. And that includes all of our training, our franchise fees, and then all the equipment for their schools. So it really is a comprehensive business. And then we kind of put you into our community. We give you all the support, and we give you the curriculum. And it's a digital curriculum that you access on a platform. So what we are doing, Bailey, and I'm so excited about this, is we're taking this full value prize, an entire school, and we're giving it to one lucky winner. And so one person is going to win this. They're going to end up with a little bit more work-life balance, which is the number one thing that our teachers say that they benefit from us. They earn way more than they would in a normal school, earning a lucrative income. We do think that teachers are underpaid, and we're delighted that our teachers aren't. They get to work with a trusted brand, and we support our teachers extensively. So for those of you who are wanting a business franchise, this is something that you can sign up for. But as I said, one person is actually going to win this prize.
That is absolutely incredible. So what you need to do is go and tag a friend who wants to start their own play school. This is someone who you know would be really passionate about it. Perhaps it's a teacher, an educator, whatever the case is. And so you need to make sure that you tag a friend, and that you obviously tag PlaySense, and you'll be entered into a draw to win a fantastic hamper to the value of 5,360 Rand just for sharing the good news. And that hamper includes a SweepSouth voucher, the Walk Out on the Water by Caitlyn De Beer book, a sorbet voucher, a PlaySense homeschool, Jeff Fitness one-on-one sessions, and the Brand Alchemy Social free one-on-one training session. And so the winner of those hampers will be announced on the 25th of May on PlaySense Instagram and Facebook. You can go and have a look at their Facebook and their Instagram page. Go and tag, go and enter the competition, and don't forget to share it to your stories and your Facebook as well. And someone is going to win that incredible hamper on the 25th of May.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with everybody, Bailey. And I want to just get everybody's video on who was on the panel now. So there's Aisha and Caitlyn, and I'll take our spotlights off so that everybody can join in. Thank you all so much. I am so grateful to have had women like you, Aisha and Caitlyn and Bailey, supreme mothers and women and businesswomen on with us tonight. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to end off tonight with a beautiful quote, and I wish I knew who said it, but basically it is, I think moms put a lot of pressure on themselves trying to balance it all. It's never going to be perfectly balanced. The sooner you know it, the sooner you can relieve some of the pressure you put on yourselves. So thank you for an incredible night tonight, and I hope you take something away that has reminded you that you are enough. Thank you so much from myself, Bailey Georgiadis. I've got to get used to my new surname. It's really wonderful to be here tonight. And Meg, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.